This afternoon, I'm actually going to share with you the modern AI threats and how we can actually take preemptive kind of prevention to actually secure your environment. So let's actually get quickly straight into the presentation. And okay, so just a quick check with the audience over here. Anybody recognize the logo? That logo on the computer? No? Netscape, right. So we are actually from the same era. Okay, so that's actually in the 90s where the computer is actually getting more popular and internet is actually introduced to the public. It's actually very simple kind of network. Just a server client kind of a setup, and there's actually no firewall, nothing. It's actually just a direct connectivity. And there's actually no malware exploit. There's only virus infection through floppy drive back then. Life is actually simple, right? And look at today's modern kind of setup. So AI revolution is actually here. The future of the AI is actually not the future. It is actually now. That's actually happening to us. I believe all the audience over here would have actually your taste of AI over the last 2 years. Who would not have actually used AI before? Raise your hand. So everybody actually used your AI before. I'm actually using AI every day. And it's actually more of an automation that actually helps to actually increase my productivity. Things that I do not want to read 10-pager kind of PDF documents, I get the AI to actually summarize in a short 1 paragraph to actually help me to actually analyze. But however, this introduction of automation as well as the ease of flexibility comes with actually the great interest to a lot of people as well. One of the key things that we can actually see over here is you can actually see over here, AI is actually being introduced to our new workspace. And the workspace is actually going to cause, I would say, increase in productivity, as well as it's actually a double-edged sword, where it can actually bring damage to the organization. So from automation to agentic AI that we have actually seen over the last 1 year, that's actually getting more and more popular, using AI to actually do autonomous kind of, I would say, decision-making by the AI. All this actually done without human intervention. And we are actually seeing that this is actually on the rise, used by a lot of organizations. But what is actually happening is we are actually seeing AI over the last 1 year. For the first time, people have been actually now tracking AI actually being utilized by the attacker. We actually use AI for our work to actually increase our productivity. Guess what? The attacker themselves is actually experimenting with AI to actually create zero-day exploit and zero-day malware. And this is actually the first time industry over the last 1 year have been actually tracking. We have actually seen the increase of usage of AI to actually cause infection. And one of them is actually some of the threats that we're actually seeing. And these are actually some of the threats that we are seeing. And you can actually see that threat actors are actually going, weaponizing all sort of things that we are doing, including using social media to actually send out phishing attacks. Traditionally, we have actually seen that phishing attacks is actually all driven from human. We are actually not seeing that the efficiency over there. Attackers are now using AI to actually automate the targeted phishing attack, which is actually very targeted until that you wouldn't even realize that they are actually AI-driven kind of content. Because the AI is actually so perfect that it can actually write perfect English to you, and there's actually no grammatical errors that you will actually thought that it's actually not from AI. In fact, this morning, I've actually one of my colleagues that's actually sharing with us a WhatsApp screen capture. Is actually the instant messenger that's actually used by most of us. And in the AI, it actually spoofed my president in the worldwide sales that's actually sending to him, asking him, hey, I need some help from you. And it's actually this event. Can you actually send some I would say Amazon cards over to me? And this is actually all automated. And that is actually where we are seeing the scary thing. The speed of actually going to victims is now actually much more faster and quicker. You do not need a human to actually manually do the reconnaissance, to actually find the target victims before you actually share that. And then some of the threat groups that we have actually seen over the last 1 year, it include the famous Chamila, which is actually one of the state-sponsored attacker groups that's actually using AI to actually target. How attackers and how researchers actually triage that back to the attacker is because there's always a fingerprint of how a programmer create a program. But what the researcher have been actually finding is some of the code used by the attacker is actually no resemblance of signature used by any of the attacker groups. And these are actually seen repeatedly in some other attack groups as well. That means attackers are actually using AI to actually cause compromise to specific victims. And this includes the ransomware attacks that we're actually seeing. The scattered spider is actually one of them, where they can actually generate ransomware attacks in 24 hours development time. That's actually an unprecedented one. Typically, to develop a ransomware and making sure that it's actually 0 day, it takes more than 6 months to a year to actually develop. Now they can actually churn out one in less than 24 hours. So that's actually the scary part of how AI can actually be helping us in our productivity as well as aiding the attacker to actually cause compromise to the victims. And this is actually moving at an extremely high pace that we have actually never seen before. Gone are the days where we thought that our technology that we deploy can actually help us to actually stay secure for the next 3 years, perhaps. But we have actually now seen that with this scattered spider, we are actually seeing ransomware churn out by the development tools, which is actually AI-driven in 24 hours. So that's actually one of the scary part that we are actually seeing. So some additional stats for you to actually take a look at it. So what we have actually seen, total threats that we have actually seen over the last 12 months, we have actually seen 1 in 5 of them actually contain some form of evasive techniques. What this means to organization like yourself, it's actually the attacker are actually understanding how you do the defense, how you duck in, and they actually create ransomware exploit or exploitation that actually bypass your defense. We have actually seen more than 170,000 0-hour phishing attack. I'm not even talking about 0-day phishing attacks. I'm talking about 0 hour, meaning typically when a phishing site has been actually discovered and published as a signature, it takes more than 6 days later, but we are still calling it 0 day because nobody have actually seen it before. So we actually classify it as 0 day. But you and I knows that through investigation, phishing attack comes and go after 2 hours. Some are even 45 minutes later, that URL used to phish your victims will no longer exist. So, but however, what we have actually seen over the last 12 months is we are seeing 170,000 phishing attacks that are actually doing 0 day. And a lot of time, they are actually typically hosted on good, legitimate website. Why good, legitimate website? Because you will be the one that actually based on policy to say is that these are actually classified as a good news website. You will thereby actually allow the victims to actually go there. And this is actually why the attacker is actually targeting good, reputable website and hosting the exploitation over there so that they can actually evade and circumvent all the defense that you actually painstakingly put in place. So why this is actually changing and why our existing technology is actually not able to actually help out with the protection? Because if we look back over the last 20 years, we have been actually very much focused on detection. Detection is actually the key and the foundation of how we actually build up our security over the last 20 years. However, you have actually seen that the AI tools have now been actually used by the attacker, and it's actually at a very high pace that they are actually churning out attacks. We cannot actually simply rely on detection alone. Detection will actually fail, and COVID teaches a very hard lesson. It takes just one patient zero to cause the whole world to actually shut down because we fail to actually detect it. When we fail to detect it, then, and as it mutate, you will further fail to actually detect it as well. So detection is actually never enough, and it's always a cat and mouse race, where I always actually tell everyone that we used to be the cat and the attacker used to be the mouse. It seems that we are actually swapping position now, because the attacker now knows how you actually do the defense, and they can actually bypass all your defense that you actually put in place. So the threat surface have actually really shifted, because the most important aspect of how to get you compromised is to find the weakest link. Where is the weakest link? That is actually where we need to actually sit down and ponder every day when I actually wake up, power on my laptop. Which are the top 2 applications that you launch? It's always the browser and your email. These are the top 2 applications. When you actually launch this is actually the gateway to the internet and the gateway for the attacker to actually cause compromise to you. So thereby, whatever you actually put in place will not actually be sufficient, because there's actually security gaps in the browser that whatever you actually put in place will be actually potentially bypassed by the attacker. And to make things more complex, the new workspace that we are actually talking about, which is the hybrid workforce, we have actually people working from home. When you are working from home, all you depend on is actually your software security on the endpoint and your user internet router that connects to the internet. The 4 walls that you actually build within your organization no longer follows where the user goes. When they are at home, you don't have that 4 walls of protection. You only have the endpoint. So this is why the new battleground is actually on the browser side, where we need to actually close off that security gaps. And modern security actually require us to actually think hard on how we can actually close off that gap. And 3 main approach that I actually give recommendation is we need to actually understand that our user are now actually working from everywhere. When they're working from everywhere, there's no longer that 4 walls that we can actually build within our perimeter. And I call it the human perimeter now. Security has to follow the user. It can no longer actually just simply based on the 4 walls to actually build your defense. Your defense have to actually be surrounding that user, and anywhere, anytime, protection is actually the most important aspect. And we need to actually be now doing a preemptive protection. We can no longer be reactive. When we actually know about a circumstances or a situation of a virus attack or a ransomware attack, thereby we actually then create the protection. It's actually too late. You would have actually been compromised, and the attacker would have actually been inside your network. And guess what? Based on recent research that was actually been studied, typically to do a lateral movement after infecting the victims, it takes about 48 hours before the attacker start doing lateral movement, meaning to actually hop around your network. Today, we are actually seeing that attacker can actually do lateral movement in seconds, and on average, within 48 minutes, they will actually start the lateral movement. So we can no longer actually be relying on detection alone. We need to actually be preemptive to actually provide a proactive prevention. And most importantly, why attackers is actually targeting your user, they are after one of the crown jewel, which is your data. The data is actually where we also need to actually secure to ensure that when there's actually any exfiltration of those data, we are able to actually stop them there and then to prevent any drastic damage to the organization. So typical the kind of a portfolio that I will recommend for anybody that's actually looking at modern security, 3 main aspects. Secure your enterprise browser, the browser that you're using. Do not go for another software to actually install a new browser, because you are actually just making things complicated. You shouldn't actually be replacing your browser, which is actually Chrome or Microsoft Edge, because they are the one that are actually tracking attacks that you have not been tracking. The patches that they actually released, they already know of that vulnerability perhaps 6 months ago, and they are actually creating the patch, creating it, preparing to roll out. If you are installing another software to replace your enterprise browser, I would say you are creating another hole for yourself. So for your existing browser, we need to actually find ways to ensure that using your existing browser, turning your existing browser into a new protection for your user without actually any software that you need to manage. And second of all is actually the data. Data that's actually residing on an end user machine that could be actually stolen by the user. We want to actually protect them. Thereby, we need to actually secure our data. And third, generative AI adoption. As I mentioned earlier, AI is actually not the future, it's actually now. It's happening now, and we need to actually embrace it. How do we actually prevent accidental loss of information? Or how do we actually prevent attacker that poison the AI to actually deliver malware to you, where the user actually download a files generated by the AI that could potentially be actually hovering with a zero-day exploit. So we need to actually secure the user that's actually using AI as well. So these are the key three considerations, and I would actually recommend that when you actually look at the holistic picture, you want to actually manage your browser to actually harden it, because we have been hardening our operating system, but we have not been hardening our browser, which is the weakest link to cause you the initial infection. So by managing the browser, which is actually hardening them, is actually one of the key considerations, and protecting the user without relying on detection. No signature is required, and we want to actually protect them against any form of exploitation, or perhaps when they are visiting to an unknown or in a known website that could have been compromised by the attacker, they are actually still in the safe haven where they are not actually been they will not be actually getting infected. And third of all, with people working from everywhere, we want to actually secure them, and that security is to actually provide them connectivity, yet having the security put in place, which is taking care of the user security, the data security, and the application security as well, when they are connecting from their home network, especially the home network, into the your intranet application, or could be actually a SaaS application. And finally, what I'm actually wanting to leave some parting points for you guys to actually ponder and consider is actually to implement security inside your browser. That's actually one of the key considerations that everyone should be actually taking care of, because your browser is that gateway to getting your user compromised. So securing your user is actually a very crucial phase that we need to actually do urgently, given the AI has been actually used by the attacker now. And we want to actually ensure that when your user is actually working from everywhere, we want to have actually the ability to secure that user clientlessly, allowing them connectivity, not using the legacy kind of a VPN connection, but rather a new generation, a new way of connecting from anywhere to the application without installing any agent or software. And finally, we want to actually rethink our security. The security that the data is actually residing on my machine, I want to make sure that there's actually no deliberate loss of information being actually siphoned out by the user. If you have been actually tracking one of the very large semiconductor company, TSMC, actually just fired 9 employees. Why? Because they leak out a very sensitive 2 nanometer development projects that they are working on, which all the semiconductor company is actually going after this race of who will be the first to create that technology. And the IP is actually the most crucial part. You need to actually protect that. Regardless whether you're in the manufacturing, whether you are actually in the finance, or whether you are actually in the telco, you will definitely have actually some form of data and the PII information as well. We want to actually secure you. And so this is actually the time that you actually need to think about acting on it immediately, and before the AI-powered tools actually overtaken your user or taken over your network. So with that, I will actually hand over the time to the host, and they can actually ask if there's actually any question from the floor.